Anna Marie says, great find. Anna Marie, there was a little bit of cheating involved. I was looking for them, so I was in the right area, but we got sidetracked by that coalition of male lions. Oh, I wish I could. I'm going to send off, see if we can find out who those lions are. But I did see a couple of cars together about 2.5 kilometers from us on top of the hill, and I saw the cheetah through my binoculars waltzing across. Now, as I said, a nice cool morning. I don't think they're done moving yet. I just think they're taking a quick break. Pokemon, a new viewer, a big welcome to Safari Live. Pokemon is wondering, would they let me pet them? No, they would not. These are wild cheetah, and it would be not good for them. They would more than likely run away. There's never been a recorded case of cheetahs attacking an adult human, but they will try avoid adult humans. Humans are the dominant diurnal predator, so they would probably run away if we got out of the car and tried to pet them. Now, Pokemon, I can't resist. Since your handle is Pokemon, I've got a joke for you. And the joke is, how do you get Pikachu on a bus? Pokemon. There we go. That was from my 6-year-old godson. But there we go. Isn't that wonderful? Tobi's still keeping a very close eye on them. Now, a coalition of 5 males like this is quite capable of bringing down an adult male Tobi. Normally, cheetahs prefer smaller prey, but when there's 5 of you, there's D'Artagnan rolling over. He's the one with the collar. There he is. Morning, D'Artagnan. As far as I know, the other males so far are called 1, 2, 3, and 4. And he looks like he has eaten something, but I say they're not full by any means. Possibly caught something very small last night. I do love the way cheetah roll over. Oh, there's a Marabou Stork flying in there, near the Tobi, about above the Tobi. There we go. There we go. The undertaker of the African bush, the Marabou Stork. Even got his black and white suit on. Look, there we go. They do look like undertakers. No offense to any undertakers who might be watching. You'll see their legs are very, very white. Now, their legs are not actually white. Their legs are dark grey. And their legs are white because they defecate on their legs. And they do that to actually help with cooling. So that is why a stork will defecate on his legs. And that's why they come across as white. So if he obviously got a nice dry spot to sleep last night, because after the rain, often they have very dark legs. There's another one coming in there, Seb. Going to join the other, possibly. Also managed to find a nice dry spot behind the car. I didn't quite catch the name. Someone was asking why D'Artagnan has a collar on him. He is part of an ongoing study on cheetahs in the Masai Mara. So he is one of the study subjects. So it is one of the ways to be quite unobtrusive. So once that collar's on, it'll be on a mechanism that will power it for 2 years before it will then jump off. So they don't need to dart him again to take these new collars off. So it has a electronically timed latch, and as soon as the battery gets to a certain point, that latch will release. Now, it is also a satellite collar, and So that means the researchers are able to ping the collar and get a location. Well, it's normally twice a day, and with Cheetah it'll be 6 in the morning when they are moving, or it will be again at sort of probably 6, 7 at night when they normally stop moving. Although we do know these boys like to move around in darkness. I followed them one night. They kept moving till about 1 a.m. And actually, the next morning, they killed the wildebeest. Probably about 100 meters from where we're sitting right now. Elizabeth is wondering, how much does a male cheetah weigh? It all depends, Elizabeth. These guys are reaching into adulthood now. They probably weigh probably around 50 kilograms, 45 to 50 kilograms. They are a lot lighter than leopards or lions. There are records of cheetah being upward of 60 kilograms, but those are normally in captivity. They have an incredibly fast digestive system as well. So the meat they do eat, they burn through very quickly, which means they've got to hunt quite regularly. And of all the big cats, they are the most successful of hunters, but unfortunately for them, they don't often get to keep their food, as it is stolen from them by either hyenas or lions. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move past them quickly. I just want to have a look if we can still see those male lions in the distance. Because we are looking up the valley that those 5 male lions were moving into. And also to see if there's any potential prey towards that area. Oh, a 2-shot for you, Sebastian. I know all cameramen love a good 2-shot. Let me just get a bit wider then. You happy? There we go, Sebastian is happy. So there are some Thompson's gazelles behind them, but they are well aware they're there. Oh, Marabou Stork flying through the Thompson's gazelles. So what happened is, I think the Marabou Stork spotted the 5 boys and thought, ooh, there's a chance for a free meal. And having decided that the boys actually haven't made a kill and there's no scraps to be pecked, let's go look for something else. Now, those male lions Faith, I copy you. So, oh, there goes the next Marabou Stork. Now, oh, isn't that gorgeous? Yeah, the hills of the Eastern Mara in the background. Now we can see our very interesting. So Seb, when the stork lands, which he looks like he's about to in the tree, next to a tawny eagle. Beautiful, lovely camera work, Seb. So you see in the distance over there, that one car over there, our crew cut friend has decided it's not worth joining the rest of that coalition. He's actually moving in the opposite direction. I don't know if do you see it? Across the valley,
so is it across the
you see the car moving.
Yes, all right.
So to the left of there we go. A little bit to the right of him. There we go. There's our male lion just to the left.
Yeah, behind the car.
Behind the car. He's decided those 4 boys are too big a bullies. He's going to try make it out on his own or find another coalition of males. I see what is happening here. I think I've just moved the car slightly, which means I'm not copying Faith all the time. So Faith, do you hear me? Okay, well, we're going to sit tight with the 5 boys. I'm pretty sure they're going to move again quite shortly. So while they have a little cat nap, let's see if Tristan's cats are napping or awake.
So we've come back to our male lions because, well, as you can see, one of them is awake. Tinyo was up for all of about 2 seconds and then flopped back down again. But Mfumo seems to be quite awake. He's watching, looking around, he's checking down towards the lodge. So I don't know if there's maybe something that's caught his attention, but he's definitely far more awake than when we were here earlier. He keeps kind of putting his nose up to the breeze as well. There's a bit of a wind blowing. You can see his mane is just sort of fluffing in the breeze a bit. It's not a strong wind just yet, but I think he's picking up some sort of a scent. It is coming from the southeast, which means that is where the Sticks and one of his coalition members is, and maybe he's picking up their scent. I'm not 100% sure. It's a bit far, I would imagine, for that scent to drift all this way, but you never know. Maybe he has picked up some sort of sign, but he keeps looking around and keeps scenting the breeze, or sniffing the breeze, like I say, and just kind of taking everything in. So we decided we'd come back and just see what they get up to. Maybe he decides to move, but he's also sitting in the most regal male lion way you could ask for. He's kind of got his head up, watching what's going on. 2 front paws are kind of straight out in front of him, very sphinx-like, isn't it? And kind of quite beautiful, actually. He's looking seriously good. Mfumo is looking a lot better than Tinyo. Tinyo's looking quite scarred and battled and kind of as though he's had a rough few days, whereas Mfumo looks as good as I've seen him look in a long time. He really worried about him this time. Was it last year or the year before? No, it was last year when he had the big hole in his face and was having a few issues with that, and it was didn't really look very nice at all. And you can see that's all healed up quite well. And I actually think his scars add to his appearance. And Mfumo's got these kind of big scars under the right eye, and you can see where he kind of healed up on his face, and there's that big cut that goes from the right eye downwards, which is one of the sort of ID features of Mfumo, and the easiest way is to tell who he is. But slowly, I think, starting to fall asleep again, although there you go, see, he just smells the wind every now and then just to pick up what's going on. Pokemon, you're asking what happened to the 5th Birmingham. So the 5th Birmingham, unfortunately, he died last year. I think it was last year May. Was it last year? Yes, last year May that he died. And he, as far as we understand, in a hunt with buffalo, it looks like he unfortunately got a buffalo horn that went into his chest and punctured his lung, and he unfortunately then died from that. That's what the autopsy revealed. And so he died up on Buffelshoek side. And so unfortunately for him, it wasn't a great way to go. It's never nice when you have a situation where an animal suffers a bit. He was in bad shape for a few days, unfortunately, before he was able to come right. Now I'm going to just probably move forward a little bit. There's a vehicle in front of us for a while, and so I want to move forward so we get that sort of view of Mfumo looking straight down the hill and down towards us, because he looks as regal could be, if you ask me. There we go. How's that? Yeah. Is that good? If he faces us, it's going to be good, I think. You can see there's a few clouds, but the sun is slowly but surely coming out. Maybe that's why Mfumo has also popped his head up, is maybe the little bit of sunshine that's kind of been hitting him on the face. It just allowed him to kind of wake up and sort of think about where he's going to put his head and where he's going to sleep. His shade is ultimately diminishing by the second. You can see his little tail is sticking out in a bit of the sunshine, and the top of his head as well. And so he's, I think, going to have to seek. Oh, and down we go again. No. I was hoping he was going to stay head up and move around and maybe get up and move towards Tinyo, but it seems as though he's just flopping down onto the ground again and is going to go back to sleep and back to the usual position. But at least we got him up and sort of looking around for a little bit. It wasn't very long, but it's better than them just sleeping and taking it very easy. You've got to see how good he's looking these days. I was also hoping that we would find some sort of sign of Hosanna, but no sign at all, so I wonder where he's gone. Roshni, you're asking, will the Birmingham boys try and expand their territory? I think they already are. I think they're moving into areas and spending more time in places that is quite far from where we've seen them. I haven't heard of the Birminghams up on Buffelshoek for a number of weeks now. Well, since I've been back from leave, I don't think the Birminghams have been up there. They've been in Torchwood a little bit, but otherwise not up into Buffelshoek. They seem to have concentrated a lot more down to the south. I think there's this Kambula pride that's on Mala that they are focusing on and starting to try and get in there. I think there's a few females that are coming into Eastrus, and maybe it's dragging them a bit further south onto Mala. They've also been going into Londolozi and a little bit even into Ottawa, which is a property that sits west of Elephant Plains and Simambili and is part of the Singita traversing area. And so they are definitely moving more and more. Whether or not they're going to carry on and keep going and head off into a different area altogether, I'm not quite sure. I don't know if they will. It seems to be this pattern that happens in this area. I don't know why it is, but we seem to keep having the same situation, which is first we had the Mapojos that were up in here. They then, unfortunately, one of them was killed and one then moved down back to the west. And then we had the Majingalans that were here and spent a lot of time, and they then moved down to the west. Then the Matimbas came through and they then moved to Londolozi, and of course then were pushed back and are now nomadic to some degree. And now the Birminghams, who seem to be following a similar trait and starting to move deeper into Londolozi and further southwest than we've seen them go for quite some time. So I think at the end of the day, yes, they might expand their territory. A lion's going to expand until he meets resistance, and at the end of the day, the aging Majingalans and are only getting older. The Birminghams are still young if you consider a sort of male lion, and so I think eventually they're going to unfortunately just outlive the Majingalans, and that means that they might push that way. And there's no other real big coalitions that are forging into this area at the moment. We've seen no pressure from the north of male lions coming from that side. We've seen very little male lion pressure from the east coming in from Kruger, and the only male lions that theoretically could be a force to be reckoned with and something that could really sort of disturb the Birminghams is that coalition of 5 right down in the south of the Sabi Sands and into the Kruger Park. But I think they're already dominant individuals that have set up their territory, and the chances of them pushing all the way up to here is very, very slim. So I don't know, it's going to be interesting. I think the Birminghams at this stage have almost a free reign over the Sabi Sands in that they can move quite a long way without too much difficulty. I mean, at the end of the day, the only other males out here are all youngsters. The Avoca males, the Solala males, they are in no way as experienced, and there's no way that they are as big as the Birminghams. So it's going to be interesting. I think they might start kind of forging, and particularly if the Solala pride and the Mangen pride and all these various other prides that are in the central and western Sabi Sands, females start coming into Eastrus. You never know. I mean, a male lion can move a long way. It just takes these guys to start moving and checking and finding these lionesses, and soon we'll have a situation where they're expanding their territory massively and are going out. The thing is, what's been interesting is following all of these male lion coalitions over the years, and particularly in this area, is that as they expand out, they tend to almost forget about the area that they've left, and with the Majingalans they just moved out, and the Matimbas came in, and it was almost like it wasn't worth coming back this way and pushing the Matimbas out. They found so much space to the southwest that they just used that rather than coming back this way. So it'll be interesting. I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting call as to where these Birminghams go and what pressure comes. I think if we start to see coalitions coming from the south or maybe the east, that might keep the Birminghams up here in the north, but if we start to see a big coalition coming from the north, that might push them southwards and west into the Sabi Sands. Randomness. Lions do sleep like this out in the open fairly regularly. I mean, today is a bit of a different story to yesterday. Yesterday was much hotter. The sun was blazing at this time, and so it would have been uncomfortable for a male lion to be out in the open like this, and would have been really difficult. So he would have been finding some shade. But yes, lions do like open clearings. Often you will find lions in the Sabi Sands lying in places like this. In fact, Chitwa Open, I've seen many lions on this open area. They like lying here. It's got a big field of view that they can see. There's water close by, and so it is common. It's not uncommon to see lions like this. They're not like leopards that prefer denser, thicker areas, although they will cross through those places and they will sometimes hunt in them. Most of the time lions like to walk in these open clearings and see what's going on and try and kind of utilize that to their advantage. So it's not uncommon at all, and I would imagine by this afternoon these two males might, I mean, they still will be here, but they might have moved a little bit just to follow a bit of shade, particularly if the sun does come out, although it seems to just be getting cloudier and cloudier. So it seems as though we're getting in a situation where we're going to probably have a bit of a cold front. So you can see lots of clouds rolling in and over the sunshine and blocking the sun out. So I think it's going to be a situation where these guys won't have to worry too much about shade this afternoon. Right, well, I think probably we're going to carry on now that Mfumo has gone back to sleep, and so while we go and try and see what else we can find, let's go back to Tayla McCurdy and see what she's been up to and whether or not she's had any luck this morning.
Well, Tristan, we took one of those roads that sort of never ends and winds in all the directions that we didn't want it to wind in, but we had some fun. But we're back again now. One thing I do want to tell you is, you know how I always talk about the Lozabisi National Park and the fact that one of the things that I miss is seeing cattle egrets sitting on elephants. We didn't see cattle egrets on elephants, but we saw cattle egrets around elephants, which was quite cool. It was a nice little herd, but just unfortunately the gremlins kept getting us. But it was something I hadn't seen for such a long time. And there were a couple of big flocks of them. So maybe as the rainy season comes about and a lot of these areas start to turn into marshes, we're going to see more cattle egrets, because that's the sort of preferred habitat that they do prefer. And then elephants love moving through them too. So that's something quite exciting, and hopefully we will see it maybe towards the end of November, and then again when the big rains come, sort of anywhere from after February to about April. We'll start having a look for that. That's a sighting to add to the bucket list, is to have not elephants on cattle egrets. That would be terrible. We don't want to see that. We want to see the cattle egrets on top of the elephants, or even just to see them moving amongst the elephants. It's quite pretty, having the green grass and then of course the dark contrast of the elephant and the bright white just in and amongst them. It's very, very nice. So we're approaching the escarpment, and there's a variety of animals that we could see around here. We could potentially see a female cheetah that Brent had found that had a den. We think she may have moved it though, so we're keeping an eye out for her. This is also the two Sausage Tree Pride's territory from around here onwards, so we could see some lions as well. And well, because it's safari, who knows, there might be a leopard up in one of these Balanites trees. So we're keeping an eye out for a variety of different animals, which is quite nice. It's been big gaps, no luck on the leopard of course. I don't know where he is, but Brent did warn me. Brent said to me, he said, Tayla, if you try and you go look for that leopard, you won't find him. He says you just bump into him, and this is only the first time I've actually gone to go and look for him. So we'll see, but he says he's done it a couple of times and searched and turned over every rock and hasn't been able to get him. It's okay. We'll get it eventually. I think I see some more. There's some mongoose just popping their heads out. Let's see if they're gonna. There they are. They're climbing up onto a termite mound so that they can see us better. There they're just ducking through the grass now, running towards the end. It looked like they were banded mongoose. Now they've all stopped again and running away. And we're not having luck today, are we? That's okay though. It's just one of those things. The bush is not always kind to you. Sometimes it makes you work. Other days it hands you animals on a silver platter. But that's okay. Okay, so what we're going to do, still just scanning, so bumpy. Still just scanning around here. But I think it'll be a good move for us to get towards the escarpment. Okay, sorry Faith, I was struggling with the question earlier, but I got this one. Now it's from Pokemon, and you were wondering if I've ever seen a mongoose take on a snake before. Not that I can really recall, but you know who has had a really cool sighting? And next time you are on board with Jamie, you have to ask her about the sighting with the dwarf mongoose and the boom slug. Because that was amazing. I think I was sitting in final control. I wasn't on drive. I may have been on game drive, but we went back and we watched it. She had an incredible one, so I won't tell you too much about that. We'll save that, and that can be Jamie's story. Of course, it is her story. I've seen a mongoose eating a snake, but like a little one, like a brown house snake, but I didn't see it kill it or anything like that. I think you're going to be super lucky to come across sightings like that. But again, some people have more luck with seeing smaller things and, you know, exciting like that. Other people have better luck with seeing, you know, predators taking down prey, that type of thing. And you know, I was just telling you, speaking about small sighting, Jahawi was just telling me, and it's a dream sighting of mine, about the time on the Tanzanian border, we were talking about ostriches and finding ostrich nests, and I said I want to be the first one to find an ostrich nest in the Mara. And he said that he's actually seen the chick watch the hatching process of ostriches. How amazing is that? So I think over the next few days I might be stealing Jahawi, and we're going to go and we're going to drive along the Tanzanian border, all that sort of western corner. We can look for the leucistic hyena. We can look for, there's a cheetah down there that's supposedly got some cubs as well. And then we need to start looking for nesting sites too. Because wouldn't that be absolutely amazing to see? I don't know how. I don't think Wild Earth has ever filmed the ostriches hatching before. I don't think there's many places out there that have, you know, seen things like that. I'm sure there's lots of documentaries about it, of course. But to catch it just at the right moment would be too lucky. So that's another sighting on my wish list. Now, where are the animals? Not much around here. That's okay. We'll keep moving. Maybe we'll have better luck the further north we go. Jamie, however, has found herself a creature that if we don't go to her very quickly, might run away.
Quickly, it's running away as we speak, and Taylor's absolutely right. Thank goodness she linked to us when she did, because otherwise it would be long gone, and we'd just be left in a cloud of its dust. Look at it go! That is at least, I don't know, 1/4 kilometer per hour? Maybe? Yeah, I would say 50 meters per hour. Let's say that. Right, so this is the first leopard tortoise I've seen in the Masai Mara. I know Brent's seen a few, and he mentioned that he saw an absolutely massive one a couple of days ago. But I have not. I've seen lots of terrapins, but this is the first leopard tortoise I've seen. So I'm very excited because I love tortoises. And it's really lovely to see them again. It's their legs, I think. There's something intriguing about the way that their legs work. In that bony shell of theirs. Look at you go! Marching along. This road's a dangerous road. First baby Tommies, now hidden tortoises. One has to be exceptionally careful when driving along it. Because it's so rocky, if there is anything that looks vaguely like a rock, it's quite a lot harder to spot. Fortunately, this one moves, which rocks tend not to except in exceptionally high winds. So we're okay there. Now, speaking of reptiles, Taylor, of course, mentioned the sighting that we had with a dwarf mongoose and a boomslang. And it was a long time ago. We'd been following Kruger, and we'd found where she'd stashed a kill. We'd actually seen her make the kill. And we all of a sudden came upon a dwarf mongoose and a boomslang locked in a battle of wills. And while there wasn't any kind of a fight, it was fascinating to watch. And I'll tell you the full story in a little bit. But let's go. I'm going to try and get ahead of this tortoise. I'm not sure if we can manage it. The speed that he's going is just so extraordinary that I'm not sure that I can match it. But I'll give it a go. I'll give it a really good go. Hold on, everyone. Give him plenty of space so he doesn't disappear into his shell. Now, once we get to his face, we did it, everyone. It was high-speed stuff, but we've managed it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. There we go. Hopefully he continues to come towards us. Now that we've got a good look at our tortoise's front half, we have a question, and I apologize, I haven't heard exactly who it came from, about the difference between a tortoise and a terrapin. Aegis, you want to know the difference between a tortoise and a terrapin. The difference is that, so tortoises have feet and they live on land. Terrapins have webbed feet and they move between land and water. Tortoises eat grass and so on. Terrapins eat little crustaceans and little mollusks and anything that they can find in the water, tadpoles, something like that. So although a leopard tortoise can swim, a leopard tortoise is the only tortoise species that can swim. Terrapins are basically water-based, but they can move on land, whereas tortoises are land-based. A turtle is a thing with flippers that lives in the sea. So those are the fundamental differences between the different types of creatures. And there's a tendency to use turtle as a all-encompassing term for the Chelonians, which is disrespectful to them, because they are different kinds entirely. It's not that disrespectful. I don't think the tortoises mind. So that's the big difference. Now this is the leopard tortoise, and given that it's the only tortoise that I've seen, it's the only species that I know occurs in the Mara. I'm not sure what other tortoise species are there. And if you look at the shape of a terrapin has a much flatter shell. It doesn't have this dome-shaped shell that the leopard tortoise has. They're quite a lot more streamlined. Even the biggest terrapins that we see on Djuma are slightly more streamlined for swimming. Oh, this is not fun terrain for you, is it, buddy? I can't at this angle see if she's a boy or a girl. Take care, no, tortoises do not have spines. What they do obviously have is the really seriously hard shell. Now that shell is bone, and when you look inside a tortoise shell, once the tortoise is deceased and has rotted away, you'll actually be able to see the spine and the ribs on the inside attached to it. And then what it has overlapping it is scales called scutes, and they're made of keratin. And they are layered up bit by bit. So if you look really carefully, you can see the grooves on the tortoise's shell. And that basically comes from periods of growth. Now, obviously, we know tortoises estivate when it gets dry. So they go into periods where their metabolism is very, very slow. And then obviously they don't grow. Then times like this, when it's nice and wet and there's plenty for them to eat, then they go through a growth spurt. So in theory, and please don't think that this is actually possible. In theory, you could count the ridges on the tortoise's shell and you could kind of guess at its age. The reason that doesn't work, it's not like rings on a tree. The reason that doesn't work is because naturally they don't always estivate, so they might have a longer period of growth, or they might estivate twice in a year, and then of course towards the top of the scales they're rubbed smooth, so you can't actually see whether or not the tortoise has grown 1 year to the next. But they are long-lived creatures and slow growers. Ah, well spotted, curious one. That, I think, is because this has been quite a lucky tortoise indeed. I don't know exactly what happened there, but so curious one is wondering about those patches of white on the tortoise's shell. That's where the hard keratin layer has actually been pulled off and moved off, and that is why I think this is a lucky tortoise, because I think when it was quite possibly a bit younger, I think it's possible that it was caught by something like a curious lion or a leopard. And when tortoises are small, when lions catch them, they tend to crunch right through the shell, and as you saw with little Shungile, and of course for Tommy as well, the leopard cubs also like to eat small tortoises and terrapins. I think that those are places where it's, and to me it looks, just in terms of the way that it's almost, not quite symmetrical, but it's definitely present on both sides. I would say that was where the mouth of a hyena or a lion or a leopard clamped around the tortoise, and obviously it was big enough that it was just not worth the effort to crack open its shell, and as a result has walked away from the experience, a little battle-scarred, but alive nevertheless. That's what I think happened there. It's definitely missing pieces of keratin. There we go, naturable. So we've already discussed lions, leopards and hyenas. They will all predate on tortoises. There are certain bird species that will also catch tortoises, fly them up and drop them from a great height. Those would be the raptor species. So something like I've never seen it, but apparently there are cases of where martial eagles have grabbed small tortoises. And then the biggest, I would say the biggest predator of tortoises would be something like a hyena or a young leopard that is struggling, because obviously they're quite easy to catch. I know we've given you a false impression about their speed, and as you can see, this tortoise is motoring along, but they are actually quite easy to catch for something like a leopard. They tend not to run quite as fast as a little Thompson's gazelle. Cheetah, I imagine, will avoid them. They might curiously have a nibble, but they probably won't be able to eat them. One of the weirdest things I ever saw was a tortoise that died as a result of being stepped on by an elephant. That was a very, very strange thing to see. Squashed tortoise right in the middle of an elephant track. And I found myself imagining that the elephant running, because it was running, the elephant. It was clear from its tracks it was racing along. I found myself imagining it looking back with great guilt, or perhaps curiosity, wondering what on earth had made that strange sound. Sammy Jane? Where is it now in real life? I've had my head down on the monitor. 2:30. Oh, there we go. Got it. Thanks, Ferg. Sammy Jane, you want to know how old this tortoise is? I don't know. I would say that it's probably over 20 years old. It's quite a big tortoise. And as I said, they do grow slowly and they do have long life expectancies. So I'm guessing at somewhere around 20-ish, possibly even older. And of course, the famous slow-growing tortoise was the inspiration for SEO Trot. And the poor lady was so distressed that her tortoise just didn't want to grow. She obviously didn't watch enough Safari Live. Alright, our moving rock is moving it, well, actually stopped moving now, and has decided to have a rest. We're going to head on off. Let's send you back across to Tayla, who has got something that probably moves faster than a tortoise.
Yes, probably when it flies. Look at this beautiful little insect. It looks like it's about to take off, though. You can see it's just starting to open up its wings. Oh, no, it's warmed up. Whee! And off it goes. That was so cool. I hope you got some screenshots of that very quick sighting. We've had this bug for quite some time and been trying to get it on camera. I'm not sure what it is. This little beetle-like thing. It did have some yellow markings on it. So I wonder if that was an aposematic coloration. Maybe it's toxic to some extent. So warning colors for other, well, for birds and whatever it might be trying to eat it. And then I love the fact that it's the top of its antenna was sort of a rusty color, rusty red, which was quite nice. So if you, maybe, I can't remember if I've ever seen anything like that. I know there was a little beetle that we would find on the morning glory flowers in the Sabi sand that had similar sort of yellow markings like that, but it definitely didn't have the same type of antenna. So if you have got some screenshots, please could you share them, hashtag Safari Live. Jahawi said he's got an insect book back at camp, so when we get back to camp at breakfast, instead of listening to morning meeting, we'll probably be identifying insects at the table, which is, I suppose, a normal thing when you're in the guiding industry. So that was quite nice. I think that's like oh no, I put a dung beetle on screen the other day, but I really, really, really miss bushwalks, and I cannot wait to get back to the Sabi sand and do bushwalks during summer after all the rain. Just looking at some tracks here. I'm just quickly check if they're hyena or cheetah tracks. These are just the hyena that was walking here. Just there, obviously, after the rain last night. So we haven't had any luck with that cheetah den. We had a scan around. We saw another vehicle that has similar idea, also stopping, looking in the sort of gorge that her den was last, or where she was last seen, but no luck. So we're just going to keep checking around here and see if we can't find her. And then again, also we're looking for the sausage tree pride. I don't know if they've been sighted just yet. Might have to get a little bit higher up. Roshni, you're wondering? Well, it's a great question. It's actually a funny story. You're wondering how much do I enjoy birding? Well, when I first started guiding, I thought it was the most boring thing in the whole world. Actually, when I was training to be a guide, and I was like, I'm not interested, don't care. I want to see the big animals, you know, typical young guide mentality. And anyways, when it came to doing exams and things like that and preparing for our final written exam, oh wow, hang on, there's buffalo. I suppose we can look at an animal while I tell you stories. And my instructor sat me down and told me how pathetic I was at birding. He told me in a pretty harsh way. It was the best thing that he could have ever done. I think it was a tactic, because I then made it my mission to prove a point. I'm very competitive, and I love a challenge, and I love it when people tell me that I can't or I'm not good at something, because then I'll work really, really, really hard to try and prove them wrong. So I love birding. You can always improve at birding. Obviously, when you move to different areas, birding becomes a little bit more challenging. You might not know what birds occur there. So it's nice to add all these different countries to my list and seeing all these new birds. I'm quite excited to see where I'm at. And speaking of birds, there's an oxpecker just riding on the back of that buffalo. It sounds like it's a yellow-billed oxpecker, just from its call. Doesn't sound very... Yes, it is a yellow-billed oxpecker. I can just see that bright yellow part on its beak, and just having a great time. Buffalo, this is dangerous territory to be moving in all on your own. But I feel as though he's an older fella. He's probably got a lot of experience with lions and chasing them away. There he goes. And there's also some elephants. We'll have a look at the elephants in a minute, though. Now, Lord Beerus, you're wondering what is the most dangerous animal in Africa? Probably the Anopheles mosquito. But if you're talking about mammals, hippos kill more people than the big five put together every single year. So they're particularly dangerous. Crocodiles, of course, are dangerous all over the world, whether it's so it just depends. But I would say probably the hippos, buffalo also can be quite nasty too. But again, it just depends on what situation you get yourself in. But just up on the escarpment, just walking, is a herd of elephants, and it's so nice to see all the elephants. I am looking forward to seeing our South African elephant friends, though. I've been telling Jahawi and Elka about them. Bored them to death last night with stories. And but it is nice to just see these families. So they've had a bit of a late start. I think that they've come from quite high up on the escarpment. When we first spotted them, well, we obviously, because it's so open here, we could see them from a mile back, and they've been slowly making their way down, and some of the steeper points they ended up getting a bit of a speed wobble, but they've sort of headed back down to sort of more flat land where they'll be happier to feed along, but the grass is nice and green. I've noticed it's sort of lovely and lush along the escarpment, then it sort of goes a bit more of a golden yellow color the further you head towards the river, and then it starts to greenen up. So let me count them quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 or 13 elephants around here. No sign of a cheetah. All those rocks and with those big trees are good spots, good shady spots for lions, for leopards, for cheetah, but sadly nothing. Okay, well, we'll carry on with our adventure then. We're still scanning. We've still got a chance. Never know. Alright. Well, speaking about not having too much luck today, somebody who's had the complete opposite is Brent. He's with the cheetah. Let's go see what they're up to.
Well, they're still catnapping. It's a cool, cloudy morning. So I definitely, and they are hungry, so I definitely think it is worth playing the patience game with the cheetah. Now, while the cheetah are flat cats, I have a question for you about cheetah. And where does the word cheetah come from? The original origins of the word. Haha. Hashtag Safari Live if you know the answer. Where does the original origins of the word cheetah come from? Now, it is a little bit of a trick question because there could be more than one origin of the word. Now, since they are flat, it's a great time to talk about them. Now, cheetah and human beings have quite a long history, and even back into the ancient times of the pharaohs. Because they are relatively easily tamed in comparison to the other big cats, they were often kept as pets, but working pets. And working pets, they were used as hunting animals. So what would happen, the ancient Egyptians used to use dogs to flush antelope, and then once the antelope was flushed and running and already stressed, they would release their hunting cheetahs. And in a lot of ancient cultures, you will see pictures of royalty with cheetah. So cheetah is very much associated with royalty. Now, of course, if you tried to keep a lion on a leash, it would probably eat you. Now, what I find quite amazing is that in certain cultures, the cheetah used to ride on the royal's saddle. They were trained to sit on a special seat behind the back of the rider. And once the dogs put the whatever animal out to flush, the cheetah would then be released and leap off the back of a horse to go attack its prey. Now, isn't that incredible? That's not something you would expect to hear. The cheetah used to ride on the back of horses. Now, Andy is wondering if lions, or we just saw, encountered the cheetah. Well, we can actually have a quick look. I think the camera might be better than binoculars in this case. I thought I saw one. But the lions are... Oh, I'll get my hand in there. They're about over there, I think, the 4 males. Just have a quick look, see if we can see any light-coloured sleeping forms. So the wind is quite strong, and that could make it a little bit of bumpy for Seb. But they're sleeping somewhere around there. Now, Andy was wondering if those lions encountered the cheetah, would they kill them? If they could catch them, yes. And that goes for any lions encountering the cheetah. Lions are the biggest killers of cheetahs in Africa. So lions pose a huge threat to cheetah. But their heads are a little bit more up, or D'Artagnan at least, than they were a little earlier. He's sort of not lying completely flat with his head up. He's actually up on his elbows. Now, chatting a bit more about cheetah history. Now, I was saying the ancient Egyptians used to use them as hunting. Not only the ancient Egyptians, but the ancient Chinese emperors. And cheetah used to occur all the way through Mongolia and into Western China as well. Now, a very interesting thing about cheetahs is their ancestors. It's thought that cheetahs' ancestors, it's one of the few of the big cats that has its ancestry in the Americas. So they actually come from the Americas, and their closest living relative is, they've got 2 close living relatives. One is the puma and the one is the jagamundi, both types of cats from the Americas. Isn't that absolutely fascinating? And so they crossed the land bridge between Alaska and Russia through Greenland. Their ancestors did. They say about probably 5 or 6 million years ago when they crossed that land bridge. And it is absolutely fascinating, but because there have been genetic bottlenecks, 2 in particular, over cheetah, one 100,000 years ago and one about 10,000 years ago. And they think it could be to do with changing terrain that has caused these bottlenecks of cheetah genetics, which has caused them to have a very, very low genetic variety between the individual populations. Chastity says Persian. Well, that's in the right area. It is quite right, but I'm looking for a little bit more detail. Henk says ancient Greek. There's a good one. Akimetos, ancient Greek. Not quite there just yet. Faisal says India. Now that is half right. India is half right. Now we're getting closer. Well done, Kathy. You are spot on. It is from Sanskrit. From the Sanskrit, I think my pronunciation is probably horrible. Cheetah, which means the spotted one. And then it was then taken from Sanskrit into Hindi. And the word cheetah that we use now actually comes from Hindi. Which they got from Sanskrit. And the first use of this word is recorded in 1610. Now the Latin name of the cheetah is quite a cool one. It's Aesionix jubatus. And basically Aesionix, which is a combination of echinatos and onyx. So Henk, you were right. That is ancient Greek, and it comes from the rough translation, means a non-moving claw, referring to the cheetah's lack of retractable claws like the other big cats, or other cats in general. And jubatus means maned. Now cheetah do not have a mane, but they do have a prominent dorsal crest that they erect when they're upset or fighting. So there we go. Two different names. So jubatus means maned, and that's to do with the dorsal crest on the cheetah's back. And Aesionix is a combination of echinatos and onyx, meaning non-moving claws. Tish says, is the cheetah population back on the rise? In certain parts of Africa, yes, the cheetah population is stable, this being one of them. And strangely enough, a lot of people don't realize that human beings have a lot to do with that, and not in the way you think. It's often not the conservation projects and whatnot that has caused cheetah populations in certain areas to rise. Of course, they do a lot of good, and especially in southern Africa, they have reintroduced cheetah into areas where they've been extinct for a long time. But it is normally in the rural farming areas, particularly in places like Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Namibia, where farmers have removed a lot of the lions and hyenas, and leopards for that matter, which creates a safer environment for cheetah. Cheetah don't really hassle livestock like the other three, so they are often ignored. So the cheetah populations, particularly in Namibia, have grown quite considerably due to the fact that the cattle farmers have removed lions and hyenas and leopards from the area. Philip is wondering, will one of the boys act a sentry while the rest sleep? No, Philip. They're all pretty much on sentry duty. So even while they're dozing, they're listening, listening and smelling. And if there's any potential threat, they will normally pick it up together. Sometimes one will pick it up before, and that is one of the reasons cheetah choose to sleep in areas like this. So you can see it's very open. It's difficult for another predator to sneak up on them. So we're going to continue to play the patience game with the five musketeers. While we do that, let's go back to my good friend Tristan to see what's happening back in South Africa.
one of the most beautiful birds that we see out here. It's a bird that we don't see very often at all, is the Birchel's cuckoo, and we've got two of them actually. There's a pair here, and both of them are kind of moving around in the undergrowth at the moment. And I love these birds because these birds are so clever. They have a situation where they're a bioindicator of rain. So when we hear them calling, we know rain is coming, and they have been calling the last few days, and so I think we might actually get a bit of rain. Now I'm trying to see if I reposition, maybe I can just get a view of them again. But there was two of them sitting so nicely in the open, and then they just flew as we went live, unfortunately, which is sometimes how it goes. But I think if we go around this little section here, we might be able to look back down the riverbed and actually see them. I don't know, VM, can you see anything? I can't see anything. No, I don't see anything. I think they've gone down into the undergrowth, unfortunately. But nice to see anyway. Birchel's cuckoos are always great. I'm sure most of you have them on your bird lists already, but maybe some of you that are starting out, there's a new one for you. I think yesterday was a good day for bird lists for those that have just started. I think we did 18 or 19 birds in the morning, which was pretty good. MH, you're asking about the big birding day in November and whether or not I will be taking part. I would really like to. I think we'd have to make a plan. Obviously, it would be great to do 2 bird-themed drives for that day and to try and have the big birding day together. And so I think by that stage, James and Steph are here with me at Djuma. So maybe, yes, the 3 of us can form a team, because you have to have a team and then you register and all the rest, and maybe we should do it. And the thing is that you can travel, so that's what makes it a little bit difficult if we're at work, but I think so. I think I would like to do it. I think it's a good thing to do, and it's always fun just to test to see how many birds you can get in a single day, and to be seeing how many you can find. So I think, yes, we should do it. I'll speak to Steph about it and James and see if they're keen to help me out and then to be a little team, and we see if we can maybe find as many birds as possible. It'll be interesting how many we can get. I reckon if we did it between the 3 of us, and maybe we could get, I don't know, I reckon 180 species, maybe even 200 if we really pushed would be possible. It would be a real push, but I suppose it is possible. I've done some big birding days here in the Sabi Sands before, and the one I think we got 180 species, and so that was quite good. And the other one, I can't remember how many we got, but it wasn't as good. I think we got just about 120, 130, which is not that great. We should get more than that, particularly if you can use bird calls as well, because in the big birding day rules, if you use bird calls, it's just got to be verified by some other guides, and then you can add it to your list. So if you use calls, then you can rack up the numbers quite quickly. But we'll see. I'll try and kind of coax the other 2 into it. I don't think it'll be too much of a problem. I think they'd both be into it, and then all of you can join us for Big Birding Day. We'll do in the morning and the afternoon birding big day. Is it birding big day, big birding day?
It's birding big day.
Birding big day, there we go. Big birding big day. Is that what we can call it, VM?
Okay, mix it up if you want.
Okay, we can mix it up. Awesome. So we'll see. I mean, maybe that's something that we can do, and like I say, we'll involve all of you as well. Big birding day, birding big day. There we go. We'll get it right eventually. Somewhere in between all of this. But it's always a fun thing to do, actually. Like I say, when I was at Singita, we did one, and we had a whole bunch of teams at Singita because we had lots of rangers there, and we all went around, and we're kind of in different vehicles, and everyone drove to different places, and we had used the extent of our traverse, and we actually did really well. There's some really cool birds that came out of it. The guys got some crazy ones, and a few rarities in there as well, which is pretty cool. But talking about sort of birds and things like that, we kind of coming along towards Nyala and South, and always like this section. I feel like there's a good birding area. It's kind of along a drainage line. There's a few dead leadwoods in places which are great for nesting birds, particularly those that do nest in dead trees, so barbets, woodpeckers, rollers, those kind of things. So it's always good just to kind of scan around these areas. It's also a good place for mammals too. It's got a few little mud wallows and pans, and so these places are great for the mammals, and they spend a lot of time in this area, so it's always nice just to check around. And talking about updates and kind of checking around, I believe Tingana is being a busy boy this morning. I believe he's at the moment on Arathusa and is currently mating with Moya, apparently, which I'm sure is not going to make Anderson very happy, but nonetheless. Our birds of this morning, hornbills. So to continue our bird theme, we've got the red-billeds here, and I think there's 2 yellow-billeds on the other side, so it could be nice to see the difference between the two of them. But these red-billed guys have got much smaller beaks than the yellow-billed. They're also a little smaller than what the yellow-billeds are, and you tend to find that they get a little bit out-competed by them, unfortunately. But look very similar otherwise. The sort of feather patterns and black and white is pretty similar to what you see on the yellow-billeds. Hornbills are funny birds. They always entertain me in the mornings at camp because they sit and they peck at themselves and they go and hop around all the cars and try and find food and all kinds of other things and drive Amanda pretty crazy because they keep landing at the breakfast table and trying to pick up food and pick through the plastic and all kinds of other things that she wraps the food in so that it doesn't get eaten by the birds. But they're a bit of a handful. And like I say, the yellow-billeds are actually in front of us as well. So we've not got not only the red-billeds on this left side, but we've got the yellow-billeds straight in front as well. I think they're yellow-billeds. They look like it. Bigger beaks. Yes, there we go. So there's a little yellow-billed pair too. And I was saying just now that there's a good place for looking for birds because of the dead trees. Now this is a species that will nest in a dead tree as well. So they often find holes in trees and nest in there. And so these are pairs that are around, and maybe there's a little competition over a nesting site between the yellow and red bills, or it could be, as you're seeing there, that bird is pecking at the wood itself. It might be some sort of food item that's crawling around. Maybe there's something on the tree itself that they're after. So interesting, but nice to see, and like I say, a good place to do a bit of birding. When you find dead trees like this, you will often find a lot of these kind of birds that like to nest in these dead trees hanging around as well. A bit of sunshine coming out. It seems that the clouds are starting to separate a little bit. It's at least been not as hot as yesterday, that's for sure. Now, Snazzies, I don't know if I got that all, but I think you said, can I wear a paper beak for birding day? Did I get that right, Faith? I hope so. I think I got that right. But if that is the case, yes, I can most certainly wear a paper beak. I'm not ashamed to wear paper beaks and various other things. I've probably made a fool of myself far more than that before, so I will wear a paper beak, no problem. What kind of beak would you like, Snazzy? You've got to tell me. Would you like a raptor beak? Do you want a sunbird curved beak? Do you want a seed eater beak? Do you want... What kind of beak do you want? Tell me, #SafariLive, as to what beak you think I should get. Well, hello, Nyala. You're rather dirty. What have you been doing? Oh no, he's been horning the mud. So you will find that Nyala and Kudu do this quite regularly, even wildebeest as well. And the males often horn the mud like that, and it adds a little bit of sort of texture and adds to the sort of size of it, and often they do it when there's females around. And also I've heard a theory that it creates a layer that makes it very difficult for any insect parasites to get into the horns and bore into it, but I'm not sure if that is 100% true. I'm not sure I believe that. I think it's more just as a way of kind of adding some sort of structure to it and making it them just more impressive and stand out a lot more. But he's having a nice little drink at the same muddy wallow that he's been horning. It seems as though he must have used that right hand side and pushed his horns into the mud and turned it up, and then now has come for a bit of a drink on the edge. But he's a beautiful Nyala. It's a massive individual. That's not a small Nyala by any stretch of the imagination. He's got beautiful big horns, and you can see he's got long shaggy fur on his neck area, so this is definitely one of the bulls that is in his prime, and I would imagine one of our mating bulls. I don't think there'd be many others that would be able to compete with a male like that. Also a very thirsty male too. So you can see that their way of drinking is a little different to the way the cats drink. They actually put their muzzle in and suck water up. Now, I believe Tayla McCurdy has now gotten involved with the paper beak story for birding day, and has now issued me with the challenge to wear a bush chicken beak. Now, Taylor, I don't know what a bush chicken beak is, but if you design it and send me a picture of your bush chicken beak, I will wear it for you, and then we'll have to think of something. What should we give Taylor to wear? Because if she's challenging us, we can't not return the favor. and VM's a good one to ask for this because VM comes up with some crackers. VM, I reckon that we need to get her to wear much like a green wood hoopoo, so a big red long curved beak, so it's got to go out. Yeah, exactly, so it must extend towards the steering wheel. So Tayla, you have to wear a big recurved nice red beak, and it must be able to touch the steering wheel because it has to be very long. Or a spoonbill, there we go, that's it, spoonbill, that's it. Tayla, you have to wear a spoonbill beak, paper beak, and it must be big, it must be proportionate to the bird, and so a spoonbill has a long beak, and so you need to have a long beak as well that comes out, and it's going to get in the way, I know, but that's okay, you'll deal with it, you'll be fine, I know, you'll make a plan. So that's what we're going to issue Tayla. She has to wear a spoonbill beak. What should we do for Brent and Jamie? I feel like they need to get involved as well. And so VM says that Brent needs a babbler beak or a hardy-dar beak because he just doesn't keep quiet. So, a babbler beak, I reckon hardy-dar beak for Brent. And Jamie? A blue waxbill beak. Okay, so Jamie, blue waxbill beak, Tayla, a spoonbill, Brent, a hardy-dar. There's the challenge issued, and we have to be a bush chicken. So Tayla, remember to send me a photo of what you want this bush chicken beak to look like, and I will happily wear such a thing and put it on my face. I'm sure that somebody is going to be on leave at this stage and get away with this, but we will enforce it later, or if they're on leave, they have to wear it anyway. They have to wear it for the day while they're on leave. The duration of our drive, wherever they may be on leave, they'll have to wear it. How about that challenge?
What about Scotty?
And Scotty as well. What about Scott? What do you think for you? I'm not sure. I'll have to think about Scott, and I'll think about James and Steph too, because we'll have to add them into this mix too if they're around here on Djuma. So we'll think about, we've got 3 more beaks to think about. I think that we need somebody to have a heron beak as well. So I don't know who that will be, and then we'll just kind of go from there. Right, but while I think about it, I believe Jamie is still driving around in the Mara, and I wonder what she thinks of VM's blue waxbill beak suggestion for her.
What about a hardy-dar beak for Scott? Or something somewhere along those lines. We'd have to find a way to fit it over his amazing beard, though. I think we can manage it. Hardy-dar. What else? Saddle-billed stork would be a pretty impressive one.
Shoebill.
Or a shoebill.
With an actual shoe.
With an actual... Oh, Ferg. We should have kept that one quiet. We could have run with that one. A shoebill with an actual shoe. I might have to wear a shoebill because I think the birding day comes pretty close to when we're going to be around in Uganda looking for them, so I might have to go with that instead of the blue waxbill. Now, we've stopped on the top of a ridge for a couple of reasons. One, if I go over the other side, then we won't have any signal at all. But two, I've just realized this is actually the best viewpoint in terms of actually being able to see almost all of the land that we traverse. Not all of it, obviously, because there's ridges in the way, but it's actually a really nice position to be in, apart from the howling wind, which is why there's such stunted vegetation around here. So I think if we work our way... No, I won't. I was going to say we work our way around from left to right, but I'm sure you'd far rather go across to Tayla and go and have a look at a baby elephant.
Jamie, it is so tiny, you would absolutely love this. It is a little elephant that is still wobbly on its feet and so small that it just weaves and bobs and weaves underneath Mom's belly. Look how tiny this little thing is. You can see its trunk doesn't even touch the ground just yet. It can't be very old. It must only be a couple of days old. When it was going, oh, maybe even younger. Oops, careful. Maybe even younger than that. Maybe it was only born maybe last night and it's still struggling to its feet. It is very, very small. Oh, careful. Oh, that is precious. And it does take them a little bit of time. Obviously, they learn to stand relatively quickly. But, navigating this really sort of tough terrain, it's not flat. It's be quite tough for a little elephant. Oh, it is so small. Yes, I'm going to change my mind. I think that's only maybe a couple of hours old. Maybe it was born last night. Seeing a lot of young elephants at the moment and staying right in between Mom's legs too. Mom's keeping a very, very close eye on it and helping it as it goes along. And not particularly bothered by the cars either, which is lovely. Now, obviously looking at this cow, and she's on her own with her little one, but it would make sense that she is on her own. Normally when they give birth, they move away from the herd. And Becca, you're wondering how big is a herd of elephants normally? It depends on the season. If it's a particularly dry season and the elephants have come together to move around, then you can have as many as 200 elephants. Otherwise, an average size herd, I would say anywhere between 20 and about 40 elephants. Again, it just depends on the area. But this is so precious. Look at it. Careful. It obviously wants to do all these things, but hasn't quite got the capacity to control every bit of its body just yet. So legs are going, right, we're going to go straight, and then trunk goes to the right, and oh my goodness, look at it. Wobbling about. Oh, this is very, very, very precious to see. If only we could capture a moment of one being born while we're live. Now, Tina, you're wondering about how much elephants weigh when they're little. Well, that little fella over there wouldn't weigh too much more than about, I would say, between 50 and 80 kilograms, give or take a little bit. I've never weighed a baby elephant, though, but they're not particularly small at all. I mean, I'd struggle to lift up a newborn elephant. So it just depends. So sort of like everything, some are born a little bit larger, like with humans. Some babies are bigger than others, but anywhere between about 50 and 80 kilograms. Isn't that absolutely precious? And it has been suckling too, in case you are worrying. I did, as we arrived in the sighting, it did stop and have a little suckle very quickly. So that's good news, because you know that's the most important thing. When an elephant stands, shortly after, Mom will try and guide it to her mammary glands. And if it doesn't have a drink, it's going to dehydrate pretty quickly. And obviously Jamie had that very, very sad sighting the other day, which must have been so traumatic to see, especially when Mom realized that the youngster was still stuck, the afterbirth was all attached to a bit of grass, which is so unfortunate. But this little guy will be okay. Elephants have got a relatively good sort of success rate in making it to adulthood, not like something like a lion cub or a cheetah cub. Now, Lily, you're wondering if this elephant, the little one, would be bigger than a German Shepherd. I'm just going to try and get us a better view quickly. I don't think it would be quite as long as a German Shepherd. Height-wise, maybe about the same. There we go. But, oh, careful, you're falling again. But unfortunately, I've never been close to a baby elephant before, so I can't even tell you I wouldn't be able to tell you how tall it is. I'd imagine it'd be about knee height or so. So I would assume a German Shepherd might even be a little bit taller than that elephant. But next time I can get an elephant and a German Shepherd to stand next to one another, I'll be able to answer that a little bit more accurately. It doesn't even know it hasn't quite sort of managed the reverse gear just yet. Oh, that is so great. Seems as though this sort of the forested areas are popular spots for the females to give birth, and it would obviously hide them, conceal them from any predators, because if hyenas got wind that there was an elephant giving birth, or lions, they'll start harassing a female to quite an extent, although you've got to be quite brave to try and take on a fully grown elephant cow. I think that is quite a risky matter. Sitting just right underneath Mom 6. That's when you know they're young, when they can go right under without their heads touching anything. Oh, that's a new little elephant. We've been so fortunate with seeing so many of these youngsters. Now, another question from Becca. Thank you for your questions today. We're wondering about the elephant's trunk and if that little one will have a hard time controlling it. Most certainly, it's a muscle. So, like anything, they have to train those muscles, and it takes a lot of time. So it takes about a year for an elephant to have relatively good control of their trunks. Otherwise, they just swing it around. And I don't think they're necessarily doing it on purpose. My greatest thing is to watch a young elephant trying to pull bits of grass out of the ground. Even one blade of grass can be an absolute struggle, but persistence and eventually it'll start developing the necessary muscles, and we'll be able to control it. So that's also a good way of how to gauge an elephant's age, is by the control of their trunk. And that's what we typically use when we see little ones. But this one you can clearly see is absolutely, fresh into this world. The fact that it's so wobbly on its legs. I'm starting to think maybe it was last night that this has happened, and she's just come out now, out of the forest and out into the open. But she is grazing towards another tree line. And she'll sort of stay out of sight for a little bit, just a few days, just until that little one can get strong enough before she regroup with the herd again. And most animals do that once they've given birth. You try and stay hidden, because those little ones are exceptionally vulnerable. But again, like I said, the chances of a pride of lions or a group of hyenas even coming to mess with mom now, it'd be quite silly to do so, because she would not tolerate them whatsoever. But if it's a big enough pride of lions, they can distract her, and most certainly the table could turn. But they're tough creatures. They're the most magnificent, sensitive, intelligent, everything you can think of an elephant is. Now, Pokemon, you're wondering if the rest of the herd would come to the rescue if pride lions came on in. If the herd was around, probably. Maybe some other females that are just on their own, or some young bulls could come in as well. Like buffalo, elephants are very social, and we've seen it before. We often talk about this, how elephants come to the rescue to help rescue other animals when they're distressing. They'll come on in and chase whatever predator it may be around, so most certainly. But if she's on her own, then there's nothing she can do. She can trumpet for as long and for as loud as she wants to, and sometimes it might not work in her favor. But there's so many elephants around within this area, I would think that someone would come and help her, even if it wasn't a part of her herd. I believe that elephants are just the most incredible animals in that sense. So I'm just watching, there's a car coming past us. There you go. The balloon team, after breakfast, after they guess have finished breakfast, all heading back home now, and just hiding on the side. So she keeps checking on that little one too. She's always swinging her trunk over, just sort of reassuring, going, okay, you're all right, it's okay. Now, Marion, you're wondering, when does the umbilical cord attachment drop off? Well, with elephants, I'm trying to think, I haven't really seen it, obviously. You see it a lot with giraffe and the antelope species, and normally around 3 months or so, that umbilical cord, this is with giraffe, it's quite tough now, and it will typically drop off just after that. But I haven't seen an elephant's umbilical cord before, besides the one which was very sad when I witnessed this sort of elephant that was stillborn. That was very sad. Otherwise, I didn't actually see it on this little one, but it was also moving around so quickly. I'm sure it would be similar. Probably take a couple of weeks to dry out, and then eventually popping off after a few months. It seems to last a little bit longer on the. Well, we always see it on the wildebeest and the giraffe and the impala. I'm not sure about elephants. And we're not sure on the exact date, but they're just disappearing out of view now. That was very nice. That was a nice surprise. The elephants have been kind to us today. Thank you, little elephant. She's just going off now out of view. But maybe this afternoon, I'm trying to think just watching her route. We can come back and have a little drive around here to start, because we're not far from home. And then maybe take one of these other roads that hug the forest. Maybe we'll see her moving around and in there. My car has just started making a strange noise. No! I have got a stone in my brake pad at the moment. I need to try and get this out. This might require some physical labor. Let's see if it's going to drop out. I find the reverse technique works quite well. Sometimes you got to get under there with a wheel spanner though. Okay, that's not too bad. I seem to have lost it. Wonderful. Whew, that's never fun. Right, so we're going to start heading towards home, back towards the escarpment road, and hopefully we'll find some interesting animals along the way. And I'm sure Tristan is heading home to the smell of bacon sizzling in the pan.
Now, we were just looking at a squirrel and a crested barbet that was for some reason sitting on the same termite mound just eyeing each other, and unfortunately they then flew and ran away from us and left us in the dust really, and we've now unfortunately got nothing to show you. I was hoping that they would still be there, but they moved. So we are slowly but surely heading back home. We're just going up towards quarantine, and taxis just turned out in front of us, which is, I was hoping wouldn't be the case. It would have been nice just to drive up here and not have any dust, but it's okay. We'll just meander slowly behind him and see if we can spot anything that maybe they've missed. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes we spot things, you can be right behind a vehicle and they miss something and you spot it. So we'll just check around and see. It's otherwise quite quiet. We went past Treehouse Dam just to check that area and just to see if there was any sign of tracks or anything like that, because I don't know if anyone even went down there. It seemed to be very quiet. There was an Egyptian goose that was sitting on the edge of the water and a blacksmith lapwing, but other than that it was all very, 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 very quiet there. And so that led us to a conversation, well, Liam and I got into a conversation about the various leopards of the area and what the potential future is going to hold for Djuma, as to who is going to end up being the dominant female around this area, and whether or not the young females from the west are going to start imposing themselves here. Could Kuchava move in this area in a few years' time once Tandi and Shadow move on? It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be difficult to tell who's going to be. I really, really wish Shungile would appear somewhere and that she would come back in. That's what we actually got to eventually, is that we hoped that Shungile would be this new leopardess that would, young leopardess that would have staked her claim and stayed here. So I really hope that she shows herself at some point. It doesn't really matter even if it's not here at Djuma, just somewhere, just so that we could know what's going on with her, or whether or not she's even still around, or if she's maybe moved into the Kruger. It's a similar thing that happened with Sakani. Sakani was the same kind of thing. She was here and then all of a sudden gone. Months went by, no sign of Sakani, no idea, and then she just appeared in the Kruger National Park somewhere in some photos. So it's an interesting kind of thing, and hopefully Shungile, wherever she is doing just fine, and hopefully one day she will end up coming back into this area and we'll see her and see where she's been doing and what she's been up to. I've spoken to some of the Chitwa guys about it, and they still maintain that she's hanging around. There's lots of tracks for a young female leopard around Hoffman's, Little Gowrie, but they just haven't found her. They said the area that these tracks are walking around in is very thick, very dense. It's a hard place to find, and I know where they're talking about. It really isn't pleasant at all, and it's not a place that is easy. It's much like the northern part of Djuma, north of the camp, where there's a lot of big, deep drainage lines, a lot of thickets. It's very tough to find animals in those kind of places, and so they say they've seen tracks. They're not 100% sure if it's for her, but they're seeing tracks of a smallish female leopard moving around that area, and so it's hopeful. I mean, it might not be her, but it's hopeful that it could be, and I'm just hoping that there's a picture update at some point that can put a lot of sort of rumors and things to rest. And if there isn't, well, I don't know where she's ended up, and I don't think anybody does know. There's no reason to think that she's kind of been taken or anything like that. There really isn't, There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there, and once again they surface as time goes on, and it happens with every time we see a leopard going sort of AWOL for a few weeks. We start to get these crazy rumors that start about zoos and hunting and all the other stuff. So it's an interesting thing, and I believe a lot of you are relieved that her tracks have been seen. Now, like I say, I mean, it's not 100% certain that it's her tracks. It's just a small female leopard, and the only small female leopards in this area were Shungile at the time that would go into that place. I suppose Shadow's cub could be considered, but her track would be smaller than Shungile's for sure, and Shungile's will be smaller than Shadow and Tandi still at this stage. So I kind of trust those trackers. The guys that I've spoken to are some of the better trackers that are in this northern section. So when I talk to them and they say that they're seeing tracks that look like hers, I always tend to err on belief on their side. These guys have been doing it for many years, and to not trust them is not really the way to go about things. I mean, they might be wrong, but at the end of the day, I think that 9 times out of 10 they're right. And if we just have a little bit of hope and a bit of faith, then you never know. Maybe something happens and she arrives and back on Djuma, and we get lucky. I mean, there has been small leopard tracks seen all over the place. So I myself had a young female leopard track on Gari Main the other day, and I certainly don't think it's Shadow's track, and I don't think it's Shadow's cub either. So I'm not 100% sure it's Rangila's, but I think it's somewhere close to hers, or potentially could be hers. So that's that. So I think that's the kind of only updates I've got. I know a lot of you have kind of been asking about her updates, but I don't really have much more for anybody. That's all I've heard and all that we've picked up from anybody recently, and so that's it. Right, now, and that's it from myself and VM. We're going to head back for breakfast. Who knows what breakfast is today? I don't think it will be pancakes. What's that? A kudu, VM. That's a rarity. It's almost like a Shongile sighting these days. VM's very excited. I haven't seen VM pointing and shouting like that for a long time. So there is a kudu that's just meandering, a couple kudu actually meandering off into the bush. But like I was saying, we're going to head back for breakfast. We're uncertain what it is today, so I don't think it's pancake day. But let's go back to Brent Smith so he can wrap things up this morning, and maybe he has an idea what he's going to be having for breakfast.
Well, D'Artagnan's just got up. All the boys are up. So they're on the move. They're heading towards where there are some big herds of wildebeest. Now, some of them have bigger bellies than others, but if opportunity does arise, they will definitely hunt. Oh, there's a little limp there. Now, you might see other vehicles in the background. This is a very popular sighting in the Mara, the Five Musketeers. Oh, there we go, a little bit of playing. Now, I'm hoping they're going to find some breakfast. However, Sebastian and I will be living off tea and cookies till we decide that the cheetah are going to stop moving for the day, and then we might go find some breakfast after that. Oh, we've got tea, cookies. What else do we have? Nuts? Yes, tea, cookies and nuts. Let's move a little bit. Now, as I said, there are going to be quite a few vehicles around. Now, as the cheetahs start moving, we're going to move with them. But remember, we're going to be with them for the foreseeable future over the next little while. And hopefully Jamie will come in and take our places. We might go look for Malaika a little bit later. But while we've got the boys on the move, this is definitely the spot to be. Now, remember, this is live from the Masai Mara in Kenya. I'm just going to try get us... there we go. How's that, Sebastian?
That's good.
Yes, so we are live at the moment. Yes, hi, guys. We've got some Safari Live fans in the vehicle next to us. But remember, we could go live at any time, and Sebastian and I will be out and about with the Five Musketeers. So remember to keep a close lookout on that go live notification, because the boys could be on the hunt. Who knows, they might bump into the 4 male lions that we saw earlier. Hopefully for their sake not, but as you know, in the African bush, anything can happen at any time, and we're going to keep to nature's schedule, not to the human being schedule. So from all of us here at Safari Live, from both South Africa and Kenya, we'll see you hopefully in a few short minutes or later this afternoon. So goodbye, bon nuit, bonjour, kwaheri.